The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me. Taxi.
Okay, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Walter Sterling with L.A. Marzulli. L.A. Marzulli, who's actually from Jersey, but he denies it. Now he lives in Malibu, and that's reason enough to be jealous. But he has put out a couple books that to Walter Sterling and you on the other side of midnight, fascinating. One book is On the Trail of the Nephilim. Nephilim. I won't even begin to spell it for you, but it's fascinating. It's about giants in North America. It's about an explanation of those 4-ton blocks that somehow or another people who only grew corn were able to manipulate. I've always been fascinated by the reality that there were giants. Regularly, there's exhibits of bones, skulls, and you see photos of archaeologists and others holding them up. Here they are. Here are the bones of giants, but they didn't exist. What the hell is that, L.A.?
Well, there's a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, which is a saying I coined years ago, but it's true. And the reason for this is everything is a narrative. Everything is a managed agenda, a steered narrative. And that narrative dovetails into the Darwinian paradigm. And anything that goes against the Darwinian paradigm is thrown out. If you're in the scientific community or in academia, you can be a Christian or a practicing Jew or whatever. But the bottom line is you got to keep that under the radar. You can't let that affect the overarching paradigm, which is sacrosanct in both academia and the scientific community, which is Darwinism. So, when Ben Stein, for instance, in his classic movie Expelled, sits down with Richard Dawkins, one of the premier evolutionists of the 20th and 21st century, and throws in the softball question, where did the first self-replicating molecule come from? Dawkins has no answer. He looks right, nobody knows. I told you nobody knows. So if nobody knows, then why are we so sure of our origins? Why do you guys paint this picture of mindless evolution? If you have nothing, how does something so complex like the human heart, let's just take that, this pump, which no one has any idea how it really works. I mean, it's electrical impulses, where do they come from? Why does this thing even work? Just take the heart alone. Take everything else out, just the pump. How does the pump work? Nobody really knows. Nobody has a clue. Yeah, we can do heart transplants. I get it. But nobody knows. So the Darwinian paradigm is sacrosanct. And anything that goes up against that, which would point to a supernatural worldview or something that doesn't jibe with the Darwinian paradigm, is immediately dismissed, which is why in a lot of museums you'll get these very giant, they pretty much sanitize everything. But you go back 15 years, and you could still see large axe heads in museums, and they would say, oh, these were ceremonial. Well, I've talked to Chief Joseph Riverwind. I've talked to Doris, who's an Apache. I've talked to a Shawnee elder, a chief, all right, Jay Keaton, and they just look at me and laugh, and they said, we had no ceremonial objects. These were made by the giants for the giants. And every single tribe that I'm aware of, from the East Coast to the West Coast, they have tales about the giants, which is why here in Catalina Island, we found a 9-footer, and we found a picture of a 9-footer. And when we published that, the museum, and with all due respect to Catalina Island Museum, it's a great museum, but they did a hit piece on Ralph Glidden, who was the amateur archaeologist who discovered that. There's a picture where Ralph Glidden is leaning on his shovel, and in front of him is a giant skeleton in situ. So when we published that, they sort of did a rebound, and they cropped the giant out of the picture. They blew the picture up, so it's like 4 feet by 2 feet, but they cropped the giant out. Well, we went back to the museum. We saw that, and we filmed in the museum going, why did you guys do this? And the curator told me, I was just told to put this up. I have no idea. So she never even saw the original picture. as far as I know. With all due respect to the Catalan Island Museum, they corrected it and they posted the original picture. They blew that thing up, probably 2.5 by 4 feet, and put it in the back, but they didn't explain what you were looking at, which is somewhat disingenuous, in my opinion, because those guys can do their own research. I was on the History Channel in search of the Lost Giants on their final in their first season. They never came back for a second season, but I showed them that picture and we walked through it and we talked about it. The History Channel obviously spun it back into the Darwinian paradigm, and you can watch that episode and see it for yourself. But we're saying these are the Nephilim. And what are the Nephilim? The Nephilim are found in the biblical prophetic narrative, and everything hinges back to the Genesis 3:15 seed war. This is not taught in most seminaries. Most so-called Christians have no idea of what I'm about to say. But you read it, it's in your Bible, Genesis 3:15. So Adam and Eve are in the garden. They've somehow done the unthinkable. They started with the shining one, the Nakash, the dragon, i.e. Satan. The pre-incarnate Jesus shows up, and he says to the dragon, the serpent, the Nakash, he says, your seed, your offspring, where do these giants come from? Why is it that there's a diaspora of the giants? There's a stele, a column of rock that the Roman historian Procopius discovered on North Africa, the shores of North Africa. It says this: we are they who fled from Joshua, the robber, the son of Nun. Joshua is the guy that led the conquest into Canaan. Who was in the Canaan? The offspring of the fallen angels. Richard Dawkins, looks at that and he's completely aghast. And who wouldn't be? Because it's genocide, unless these are something else. And these entities which are in the promised land are the offspring of fallen angels and human women. In my opinion, they are soulless. They are in a fixed state, and this is why the mandate comes down. And that is the culmination of the seed war.
Why don't we see them today?
We do.
Alive.
Absolutely we do.
Alive.
Yeah.
Where do we see them alive?
Okay. In the alien abduction phenomena, so now we move from ancient history to modernity. And there's an ancient scripture, a prophecy, that says it'll be like the days of Noah when I return. This is Jesus saying this 2,000 years ago. So the question is, are we in the days of Noah? What differentiates the days of Noah is the mixing of the seed. Are we seeing the mixing of the seed? Absolutely. We have a whole film on this, on the abduction, the so-called alien abduction phenomena. Spielberg's film, he flips the script, and spoiler alert, but it's in the trailers. This little girl and the little boy are abducted. There's no parental agreement allowing this. And it's all deceptive because the gray alien, and most people know what I'm talking about because it's been enculturated. Go back 30 years and nobody knew what I was talking about. But now most people do. So this gray shows up and presents itself as a stag, as a friendly deer. And so the little girl follows it, and it looks like a gingerbread house. It's not the gingerbread house. And I called that the moment I saw the first trailer because I've been studying this stuff for 30 years. It's a UFO presenting itself as a gingerbread house. So she goes in. Next thing you know, she's on that steel table, and they're doing stuff to her. And so he flips the script. Somehow that's okay. It's okay to abduct a 5-year-old. It's okay to do something which we have no idea what you're doing until the last part of the movie, and then it's deemed as a gift. Well, that violates everything human beings believe in pretty much every culture all over the planet. Hybrids are walking amongst us. That's the title of David Jacobs' book. And he studied under...
what do they look like? Wait. What do they look like? If they're walking amongst us, how do they know that they're hybrids, and how would we know? How would we know? We
don't unless they reveal themselves. And I realize this is the deep end of the pool. This sounds really creepy. And our fourth film
this sounds exactly what we want to hear at this time of night. Now, you and I are talking to L.A. Marzulli. L.A. Marzulli has put together a book that's brilliant and amazing called On the Trail of Nephilim. Nephilim, giants, and they're not mythical. The bones exist. Now, at some point, these bones wind up at the Smithsonian. Why do they go to the Smithsonian? Who controls that access, and who's paying for it?
Well, it's a really good question. Some of it was done under private donations. The Smithsonian was founded by Smith, and that's why it's called, Smithsonian. And but since then, a lot of taxpayer money, a lot of private donations. They control the narrative. Why can't we go in and look at the narrative? Let me tell you a story. I was in a museum. and I'm not going to give away the museum's name because I don't want them coming back at me. There was an artifact that we saw there, and it was like a bee. No way Native Americans did this. No way. There's modern type tooling done on this. So we had an archaeologist. We have several archaeologists on our team. And they wrote a formal request to see it. Well, they have to. The museum approved it, but they had to get approval from the tribe. The tribe flatly refused. This is where we're at. So here we have an artifact that proves that there's a hidden history, and we can't look at it. We can't even examine it. We can't take it out of the case. All we wanted to do was see how this thing was made. Are there modern tool marks?
But why? Yeah, but why? But who says that? Where's that memo come from?
Really good question. All we know is that our access was denied.
And that's it. And that's all we've known for 125 years about the Smithsonian.
My friend, this is where we are. This is how the game is played. And, you could say, let me just jump to another subject. The whole ufology thing, whole UFO, UAP phenomena was poo-pooed. Oh, it was swamp gas. It was a flight of birds. It was the planet Venus. And now, in 2026, you've had 3 dumps by our government telling us, the American people, that the phenomenon is real. So the cat's out of the bag there. At the 79-year cover-up from Roswell has just been sort of released. We'll see what Trump does in the next couple of days here on July 7th, 8th, or 9th.
Let me share something with you that may be useful to you. Trump has done exactly what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
He said he was going to dump the unidentified flying object files. And what are those files? Those are files of things that the government can identify. We don't know what this is. That's what he's revealed. He has not revealed the identified objects. He never said he was going to release the identified objects. Remember when he first announced he was going to do this, he said, well, some people will want to look at this. For a man who was born to hyperbole, he had no excitement about this. It was, yeah, well, some people will like it. I don't care. Well, that's because these are unidentified things, and their big admission is they don't know what it is. And the only reason that caused them to hesitate is because we expect them to know what these things are. That's why we have an Air Force. But we didn't. And it's also why it comes out of the Department of Defense, because their job is to defend us against these things. But they've given up. They don't know what this stuff is. But they know what other stuff is. He never said he'd give us that.
And that's a really good point on some level, and I understand that. But as the ufologists have been studying this for 30 years, they are releasing this in other ways. The film by Dan Farah, Age of Disclosure, where they've got congressmen, congresswomen, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, physicists, scientists, really smart people. They all look at the camera and a very staccato-like cadence goes, we are not alone in the universe. We are not alone in the universe. And they say it over. Each person, that's their opening remark. We are not alone in the universe. And then they start talking about the whole phenomenon.
Exactly. Now, the next question I've got, it's easy to see that when we see ancient walls, ancient stonework, that we can see as an amateur, I can see the first layer, here are 10-ton blocks. And then the next layer, here are, 100-pound blocks. And then up top is pebbles, clearly constructed by 3 different civilizations.
Correct.
Who and how were the 3-ton blocks moved?
Okay, first of all, they were a lot heavier than 3 tons.
What were they?
The stones at Sacsayhuaman weigh over 50 tons, many of them. They're huge megaliths, and they're put together seamlessly. And the quarry is 45 miles away. And I've been to that site 3 or 4 times. And every time I'm there, if I lead a tour, I tell the people, touch the stones, because what you're touching is a supernatural. These were not created by human beings. I call it fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. The Peruvian government insists that the Inca were master stone builders. But what we see are 3 different types of stonework. We see the original at Sacsayhuaman. Above that, we see head-sized boulders, the Inca work. And then when the colonial people come in, you see them build on top of that, the Spaniards. So there's 3 different builders, and it's obvious to see. There's a place in Cusco that really illustrates it. It's a corner. A lot of tour guides take them there because the first course are the megalithics. And there's a woman there, usually on the corner, selling something with a llama, whatever, flowers, and she is dwarfed by the stone. And then above that is the Inca, and then above that is the colonial. So you see three different builders using three types of stone. All of them use mortar. The Inca used mortar, the Spanish used mortar, but the original stones, there's no mortar. They are put in place. It's called ashlar construction. They are put in place. They are seamless. It is mind-boggling. The first time you see it, you just sit there with your jaw on the ground.
How do you think they were moved?
Levitation.
Got it. Sound or just mind meditation, levitation because they aren't humans?
When these angelic entities appear, so I'm going to throw you, we're going to go to modernity, the present day, then we'll jump back. All right?
Yes.
So a person is laying in bed, they're sound asleep. All of a sudden they awaken and they're terrified. They realize they can't move. They can't move. They look to the left, they see the grays, the little grays, the big heads, and the black eyes. Right. Next thing you know, they're being levitated off the bed, which is impossible, and then they're floated to the window. And they're thinking to themselves, is the window going to open? But the window doesn't open. They go through the window or through the ceiling or through the wall. These entities can manipulate space, time, matter, and energy. And that's exactly what we're looking at thousands of years ago at Sacsayhuaman. They're manipulating space, time, matter, and energy.
Now, you and I are talking to L.A. Marzulli, who's just come out with a new book about the UFOs. What is the premise of that book, and what do we discover?
It's called Rungs of Disclosure, and the idea, the analogy is the rungs of a ladder. So we're going up towards full disclosure. And the kicker for that was 2017, Tucker Carlson's show, Commander David Fravor, is on Tucker's show. It's a Friday night. It's always on a Friday night. It's the last segment. And Tucker opens it up saying, UFOs used to be the stuff of tinfoil hat wearing people and conspiracy theorists, but maybe we shouldn't think that anymore. Commander David Fravor joins us, former F-18 pilot. Welcome to the show. And then there's this back and forth between Fravor and Tucker Carlson. And, Tucker asked him, what do you think this was at the very end? And Commander David Fravor looks right at the camera and says, whatever this was from, it was not from this earth. It wasn't the Chi-Coms. It wasn't the Russians, North Koreans. It moved 50 miles in 2 seconds. It was a tic-tac shaped object. When the thing flew at him, it jammed his radar. It's a typical UFO, UAP encounter, except it's atypical. And that was the first rung on the ladder of disclosure. The second rung is Luis Elizondo, a whistleblower who used to be the head of ATIP.
By the way, I'd like to get through one show without hearing the name Luis Elizondo.
Elizondo.
Yeah, him. I have Dave Scott on. I have Ross Coulthard on. I have Robert Clotworthy on, and they will all say that name at some point in the conversation.
Sure. Because Elizondo risked everything and came forward and said the phenomenon is real. He was on Tucker. That's the second rung of a ladder. And Elizondo stated on the record that we have metal that was retrieved from crashed UFOs. I have a piece of metal in my hand right now. I wish you could see it. And this is in one of our films. We have 10 films on the whole UFO phenomena. And number 8 is In the Debris Field. We went to the debris field in Roswell, New Mexico. When I say we, our guy was Chuck Sikowski, UFOnut.com, Frank Kimbler, who's a scientist, and my business partner, Gil Zimmerman, and Jim Peterson, our sound guy. And we're out there in the debris field. We've got metal detectors. And Frank Kimbler knew where to go because they have seeded that debris field with 12-inch metal spikes. So when you go with a metal detector, it goes off your metal detector, and you dig up a metal spike.
Really?
Yeah, really. I have it. Hear that?
Yeah, I hear it.
I'm tapping the metal spike that we found in the debris field in Roswell. So we're in the debris field, and Frank kind of knows where to go. He's outside the place, and he goes, guys, I got a hit. We go running over, and this is all on film. And Frank digs up a piece of the metal, and next thing you know, I'm holding it in my hand, and we're washing it off, and there it is. It's all folded in on itself. We took it to a laboratory and examined it under a scanning electron microscope. It's an aluminum alloy, but it's an unknown aluminum alloy. It doesn't fit anything that we have. Think about that. And this is 79 years later, the 79th year of cover-up in Roswell.
What's the name of that book?
Well, that's the DVD. That's called Roswell in the debris field. There's 10 DVDs in our set.
But
that's
your
number 8 in the debris field.
Your new book, what's it called?
New book is Rungs of Disclosure.
Rungs of Disclosure. This is L.A. Marzulli. L.A. Marzulli. Same night, by the way, sir, that Ross Coldart is on the show. This is a very big night. Ladies and gentlemen, what an honor to speak to you and to hear some of the explanation as to why the skeletons are at the Smithsonian, why we can't see the giant skeletons, a spiritual explanation as to what the skeletons are, and by the way, validated by others. There are PhDs who come on the show. Michelle Gibson says exactly the same thing you say. She says this is a battle between good and evil. We will win, but it's a battle between good and evil. And she's not a Bible thumper at all. She's a hardcore academic, but she's saying all the evidence I see is exactly the same as the evidence L.A. Marzulli sees. Sir, thank you very much. If somebody wants to see you on a website, send you an email, how does that happen?
LAMarzulli.com, LAMarzulli.com. We have 34 films and 16 books. There's a corpus of work. I do a show 5 days a week on YouTube. I'm all over social media.
Will you come back on my show?
I would love to come back on your show.
All right, you got it. This will happen on a regular basis to the point where you're annoyed.
I love to be annoyed that way.